Hello, I am Nilay Rathod, and today I am going to present on three prose writers, Indian prose writers, Radhakrishnan, Raghunathan, and Nirad Chaudhary. These are my information. First, we have Radhakrishnan, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. We generally know him as the President of India and a professor, teacher. He was born on 5 September 1888, on which we celebrate Teachers' Day every year. Natively, he known as Radha Krishnaya. Born at Tirutani, Radhakrishnan had his education at Tirupati Vellore and Madras Christian College. Best known of the three means Radhakrishnan, Raghunathan, and Nirad Chaudhary. Radhakrishnan is a philosopher, a statesman, mean politician with an international reputation, a scholar with a phenomenal memory, and a resourceful and eloquent and effective speaker, and a voluminous writer with uncanny flair, lucidity, and grammatic strength. As a teacher of philosophy and a writer, Professor Radhakrishnan held on tendency and a sense of dedication to a course chosen 60 years ago. He has taught at Madras, Mysore, Kolkata, and Oxford University. He has been Chancellor of Andhra and the Banaras Hindu University. He, he has presided over UNESCO General Conference and the All India Writers Conference. He has been president of the Sahitya Academy. He has delivered the Kamala Bampton, Haskell Miller Upton, and Hilbert Lecture. He has addressed the World Congress of Faith and most of the university convocations in India. After independence, he became chairman of the Universities of Commission and India's ambassador of Soviet Russia, vice president, and finally president of India. He was second president of India and first vice president of India. He completed his master's thesis on the ethics of the Vedanta and its metaphysical presuppositions in his 20th year, and since then his pen name in the service of his mind has not been idle. Two of his professors, Reverend William Maston and Dr. Alfred George Hogg, condemned Radhakrishna's dissertation. According to Radhakrishnan himself, the criticism of Hogg and other Christian teachers of Indian culture disrupted my faith and shook the traditional props on which I learned. Radhakrishnan himself described how, as a student, the challenge of Christian critics impelled me to make a study of Hinduism and find out what is living and what is dead in it. My pride as a Hindu, roused by the enterprise and the eloquence of the Swami Vivekananda, was deeply hurt by the treatment accorded to Hinduism in my missionary institution. The criticism led him to study Indian philosophy and religion. At the same time, he condemned Professor Hogg and said my distinguished teacher and as one of the greatest Christian thinkers we had in India. According to Iyengar, Professor Radhakrishnan subjected the thought of Western thinkers, for example, Bergson, William James, and Bertrand Russell, to a searching examination in light of the absolutist thought of the Upanishad and in his The Reign of Religion in Contemporary Philosophy. He elaborates that this book demonstrates Radhakrishnan complete intimacy with Western thought on the one hand and his complete mastery over English language on the other. Iyengar also argues that an idealist view of life is unquestionably Professor Radhakrishnan's most valuable contribution to constructive philosophy. For in it, East and West meet creatively and achieve a voice of articulation intelligent to all. Philosophy, Advait Vedanta. Radhakrishnan was one of the most prominent spokesmen of non-Vedanta. His metaphysics was grounded in Advait Vedanta, but he reinterpreted Advait Vedanta for a contemporary understanding. He acknowledged the reality and diversity of the world experience, which he saw as grounded in and supported by the absolute or Brahman. Radhakrishnan also reinterpreted Shankara's notion of Maya. According to Radhakrishnan, Maya is not a strict absolute idealism but a subjective misperception of the world as ultimately real. Accusation of plagiarism. One of his students accused him of plagiarism to steal his text or work. In January 1929 issue of the Modern Review, the Bengali philosopher Jadunath Sinha made a claim that parts of his 1922 doctoral thesis, Indian Psychology of Perception, published in 1925, were copied by his teacher Radhakrishnan into a chapter on the yoga system of Patanjali in his book Indian Philosophy 2. Published in 1927, Sinha and Radhakrishnan exchanged several letters in the Modern Review, in which Sinha compared a part of his thesis with Radhakrishnan's publication, presenting altogether 110 instances of borrowings. Radhakrishnan felt compelled to respond, stating that Sinha and he had both used the same classical text. His translation was standard translation, and that similarities in translation were therefore unavoidable. He further argued that he was lecturing on the subject before publishing his book, and that his book was ready for publication in 1924 before Sinha's thesis was published. Next up, we have Neeraj C. Chaudhary. Neeraj Chaudhary, in a full Neeraj Chandra Chaudhary, was born in Kishoregunj, East Bengal, British India, now in Bangladesh. The second of eight children of Upendra Narayan Chaudhary, a lawyer, and of Sushila Sundarani Chaudharini. His parents were liberal middle class Hindus who belonged of Brahmo Samaj movement. Chaudhary was a prolific writer even in the last year of his life, publishing his last work at the age of 99. Iyengar introduces Neeraj Chaudhary as an unknown Indian till 1955 when his autobiography made him famous. He continues, Neeraj Chaudhary is a master of prose style, an intellectual who has the courage to stand aside and be different from crowd, a critic of Indian society with an almost Swiftian capacity for making surgical probes. Each, in his own ways, has tried to interpret Indian history and thoughts and altogether their approaches. His major works include his autobiography, the autobiography of an unknown Indian, published in 1951, put him on the long list of the great Indian writers. Chaudhary had said that the autobiography of unknown Indian is more of an exercise in descriptive anthology than autobiography. It is stated that Chaudhary was hounded out of government service, deprived of his pension, blacklisted as a writer in India, and forced to live a life in penury. However, sociologist Edward Sale, who helped Chaudhary to immigrate to UK, stated in his article "Citizen of the World," Chaudhary retired at the compulsory age of 55, but was not eligible for a pension because he had not completed his years of service. It is also stated that furthermore, he had to give up his job as a political commentator in All India Radio as the government of India promulgated a law that prohibited employee from publishing memoirs. However, he did publish in non-government magazine. Chaudhary argued that his critics were not careful enough readers. The dedication was really a condemnation of the British rulers for not treating us as equal. He wrote in a 1997 special edition Granta. At the age of 57 in 1955, the For the first time, Chaudhary went abroad. After coming back, he wrote a passage to England. In this book, he talked about his visit of 5 weeks to England. His later works include personal essays, biography, and historical studies. His works include autobiography, passages to England, Continent Circle, intellectual in India, and so on. Last, we have Raghunathan. Raghunathan, better known by his pen name Vigneshwara, is a deep student of English and Sanskrit literature, and was for many years the leader writer of the magazine newspaper. But it was as the writer of the Soto was weekly co-series that he made a significant impact on the reader of Swatantra and Swarajya. One of our great journalists, and Raghunathan of the Hindu, became late in life columnist who wrote under Sotos and signed himself as a Vigneshwar. After a lifetime of training in exacting a discipline in expression in a difficult foreign language, Raghunathan was now revealed himself as the perfect humanist and a flawless literary craftsman. Raghunathan was usually the conservative, unpopular, die-hard view. His assent with tradition was apt to assume the tone of dissent from current notion of progress, and yet his view couldn't be dismissed as of consequences for the under, undertones of assent and dissent came with an accent of authority that compelled attention if not acquisition. There was a certain challenge in Raghunathan's assumption of Vigneshwara. Vigneshwara is term generally derived from Indian mythology, like a king elephant, which is bulky and in size and slow. Raghunathan continued. The Sota was featured a decade ago, but series of essays has been collected since in the volume The Coming of Freedom, Our New Rulers, The Avadi Socialists, and The Planner's Paradise. He has also published Reasons and Intuition in Indian Culture, being his Madras University extension lecturer. But the essays seems to be his real forte. Some of the best essays in Soto was a collection could be said that they might be the elephant gods on salaries of the mind, whatever the subject, economics, politician, education, social life, literature, music, philosophy, it is touched with the seal of universalities. Spirituality, that is the philosophy that he was following, the culture of people, the complex of Swabhav, Swadharma, and Swatantra and Swarajya. That is the true index of culture. Indian spirituality isn't something opposite to life and world affirmation. Spirituality is an awakening to the inner or true reality of our being. But how does one achieve contact with ground? This alliance between intuition and reason, this clue to enlightened and wise living, Raghunathan calls Vivek. Without the continual exercise of Vivek, man would be but a fourth animal, a siege of a contradiction and frustrations. The integrated man is one who has achieved a harmony between himself and the world, his inner and outer life, his thoughts and his word. The man afflicted with pramad, the man without vivek, has a clouded consciousness that is known neither right measure, mantra, nor self-restraint, dhamma, but is a very prey to egoistic separativity and the misery arising out of it. Literature makes such a feat of a transcendence possible because the alliance of creative imagination and deep sensibility, which correspond to the two terms of intuition and reason. Iyengar also defends this philosophy of Raghunathan by stating that Raghunathan's feeling For tradition doesn't, of course, make him a strike in the mud obscurity. He is fully aware of the tempo of change in this age of nuclear power and space travel. Change is easy and as dangerous as it is easy, but stagnation is no less dangerous. These are works. Thank you.
Yes, the typed questions are yet not reflected here. Yes, Nirav, you can.
So Nilay, my question is like, can we say that Raghunathan was totally interested in Indian philosophy, like this philosophy of being merged in Brahman, or being a Viveki person, or being a an enlightened one. So was he in kind of in any against of this philosophy, or he was in total conformity with that? Thank you.
So we can't assume he was totally into the philosophies, but we can say that he was more or less interested in Indian philosophy because he was born a Brahmin and his parents were associated with this Brahmo Samaj movement. And as we have seen that he was putting more stress on Indian philosophies like Vivek, Dharma, and all these things. So we can say that he was interested in Indian philosophies.
Nilay, who is more likely to be accepted as prose writer among these three? Who is more likely to accepted as prose writer among these three writers?
First of all, as Iyengar has also described in his book that these three are the best prose writer among the Indian English writers. So here we can't just make a claim that one of them is the best prose writer. But Iyengar also said that uh, Radhakrishnan is one of the best among the three. Like that was in my first light. So we can assume that.